I am interviewing a gentleman here who says he's a former NASA satellite engineer. Very interesting, and now he's a flat earther. I mean, I think that's what he called himself. Sir, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So this is Manway, and I wanted to talk to you guys about my experiences. I wasn't very high up at NASA. I was just kind of low man on a totem pole, but I worked on satellite and propulsion systems and thrusters and things like that. And so here's the thing, as far as and again, like he said, now I'm a flat earther. One of the things that I tell people all the time is that engineers are kind of removed from the end product, especially because I was simulations. A lot of simulation people, they kind of just sit in a computer lab and they don't really know whether their stuff is actually being built, whether it's actually being put in, on the satellites, and whether it's actually being launched into space. So there's that disconnect that I never really thought about until
Mhm.
years later. Somebody confronted me with the flat Earth, and I was like, this is really freaking crazy. But at that point, I had already, been kind of red pilled to some degree on some things, and so I had already gotten good at overcoming cognitive dissonance. And so I was like, well, this guy's insane, but I'm going to be nice to him and I'm going to give him a chance. And it turns out he basically, I mean, he gave me like 4 hours worth of videos to watch. And after about the, I don't know, third or whatever hour, I was like, man, this guy is right.
Right. And this was like was this a friend of yours or something
No,
like that?
but it was just a random dude on Gab.
Uh,
Yeah. So my story is I got banned on Twitter like 9 times, and so I followed Jared Wyand onto Gab, and that's kind of where I've been ever since. And I don't think he's around anymore, but I'm glad that I'm on Gab. And you know, I think it's really important to be able to talk and not be censored. That's a huge thing for me. And whatever the powers that be are censoring, that's kind of the topics that I feel like that's what people really should be talking about.
you worked on satellites. Okay, so you were hands-on with satellites.
I was not. That's what I was trying to say. Is that I mainly did the design on a computer, and I built prototypes, but I never saw the final product be installed onto the satellites and then launched, right? So that's kind of the thing, is when people are like, well, okay, everybody has to be in on it. Like, no, not everybody has to be in on it. I was not in on it. I didn't know any better. I didn't think about it. I just designed my little piece and I did my job and I sent it to the people that I needed to send it to. And that was it. It's not like everybody that's at NASA is part of this, cover up. And most people are just
Right.
normal people.
Right, and obviously, I'm sure there's not too many details that you want to divulge. Nothing too deep, but you said that you were sort of lower down on the ladder.
Yeah.
So that is the thing.
I
I
was
mean, I imagine NASA is pretty big, and so I bet there's a lot of people who are sort of at the bottom of the totem pole and kind of have no real clue what the hell's going on at the upper echelons.
No, yeah, I mean, and I'm like, I should just probably say this right now. I'm not a Freemason. I'm strongly against Freemasonry. I don't know if I'm assuming most of the people that are probably listening to your streams know what that is, and that's not me. So there's that. And yeah, like you said, I was an entry level engineer. I'm no longer there now, but yeah, I was very removed from the final product.
Right. So so what was it like when you started to realize that the spinning spaceball model is not what they are telling us, that our reality may not be the spinning
Yeah,
spaceball model? What was that like for you, who's been in the space industry, for lack of a better phrase, who's had experience so close to all of this? Because that is like a common argument people make. Like I was debating some guy a few months ago, and he's a rocket NASA fanboy. And one
yeah,
of the things that was giving him trouble was that he couldn't comprehend how all the rocket technology, all the the blueprints, all the manuals, all the people, all the salaries, all the careers in the rocket industry, he couldn't comprehend how that could all be faked. So
Yeah.
how did that affect you in a way?
So here's the thing. My answer to that would be it's not. All those people actually work there. They all actually work on rockets. Rockets are actually launched, right? And all those rockets actually exist. But or most of them. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that every single thing that they tell you is true. But what I am going to say is that, clearly rockets have been. Oh, did I lose you?
No, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Apologies.
Oh, no, no problem. Um, I was just saying that the rockets are real, but they're launching them, and I don't know where they're going. I think, Eric Dubay says they're probably just launching them into the ocean. I'm not going to claim that I know where they're launching them, but I mean, clearly rockets have been launched,
Right.
right? But that doesn't mean that the people that are working on them, you know, they know that they're launching it into the ocean or that they know, I don't think very many people really know what's up, to be honest.
That's a fascinating point. That's a fascinating point because that is something I've thought about myself, which is how many people are in on it? Is it the Illuminati in a smoke-filled room, or is it just some sort of like everybody's kind of in on it, but not really entirely knows? Like we're all just little pieces of the puzzle, and we're all like in some kind of collective state of denial, which I would argue is we don't want to admit that this place might have been created or that there's more to this place than just the physical matter that the atheist physicalists want us to believe. I think
Yeah.
that's part of it.
That's one thing that I always touch on when I'm arguing with people is, heliocentrism is in itself a religion. So they replaced, you can't really like the atheists, they're not really atheists. I mean, they say they are, but the thing is they believe in the whole ball heliocentric model. And so what the people at NASA, basically I call them Luciferians because it's not everybody at NASA, but it's, these people, Luciferians, sometimes I call them Jews to be honest, but um, I don't think they're all Jews either. But they created this kind of alternative religion, to be honest with you. If you really go back and you look at it and you look and see, all the roots of this are all in Freemasonry. It's all the Jesuits and it's all these little secret organizations that all have their roots in Freemasonry and basically world Jewry, which again does not include all Jews, maybe, but
Hmm.
so it's and what they're really doing is they're just, in my opinion, they're trying to subvert Christianity. They're trying to make you believe that you're on a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere and that you don't matter and that you know that it's impossible that God is above us and that he could have created this. Because on the first page of the Bible, it said that the waters, God separated the waters from the waters, waters above and waters below. And if there's
Right.
space, infinite space above us, that's not water. I believe there is water. And if you look at the launches, I forget what date it was, some October SpaceX launch. You can see the rocket going into the water and you can see it come out. You can see the streamlines and when they stop.
Now, when you say go into the water, like you mean like splash into the water, or just
Yeah,
like
they shoot the rocket straight up. It goes splash into the water, and you can see the difference in when it's between. You can see it cross through the mediums if you look at it. I'll see if I can
and
find that video.
this is a rocket that was supposed to be going to space.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. I mean, yeah, that's what they say that it's going.
Yeah, that's all. I have a quick question for you. You seem like you're sort of in the upper echelons of flat Earth. You seem to know pretty deep, and you seem to be pretty capable of deep thinking on this topic. How is it possible that there's so much overlap between the flat Earth and the globe Earth? And what I mean is, like an example, the globe tards, um, the psycho-religious globe freaks, cult members, they will say that a ship disappearing into the distance, into the horizon, is a proof for the globe. And of course, you know, intelligent people, i.e., flat earthers, they say, they have their own explanation, which of course I believe to be true, and I think stands up to the evidence and the scrutiny far better. The explanation on a flat Earth for why ships appear to disappear bottom up into the horizon. But time and time again, it's almost like the globe explanation can kind of match our observations.
Yeah.
Like, so, but how is that? Like, what did is this Satan? Like, how is it possible that there's these two competing models that every time you can almost say, well, that could actually work on a globe, but it could also work on a flat Earth? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think is the cause of two totally different shapes, a flat and a sphere, somehow being able to so closely match our observations? No, even if you think it's flat around, but so what do you think about that? Like, how is that why?
I mean, that's why it's so clever, and like you were kind of alluded to Satan. I think that's kind of what it is. It's a satanic um kind of a copy. It's like they made it fit so that they could basically convince us all that that's what it is, even though it's not.
Right.
And as far as the actual direct point, as far as the seeing out into the horizon, and it's I think it's all about measurements. People see something that's disappearing bottom up, and they say, oh yeah, see, it's disappearing over the curvature, right? But and flat earthers say, okay, but that's because it's disappearing beyond the optical convergence point. It's basically diverging, right? You can
Of
see out
course.
into a certain point, and then it diverges. Like and here's the thing, and you asked something earlier. It's the reason it was, a lot of people have trouble with the flat Earth thing, and I did too at first, but it was a lot easier for me because I understood the globe model so well, and so I understood why it didn't work
Right.
because I had studied, all that stuff, aerospace engineering and space engineering and all, and I knew exactly how the globe model worked, and I know why it doesn't work. The aerodynamic stuff, it's people always say, well, going back to the ships disappearing over the horizon. So there's two competing explanations for it, and here's the thing, it's if you actually measure, so the flat earthers are, they're more analytical about it. They actually do, the measurements, and they're like, okay, look at this is however many miles away, and this should not be able to be seen, right? Yes, part of it's below the horizon, but it's not as much of it as the globe says it should be. So it is not behind a physical curve, that's that size,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. It's if you use the trigonometric model of the globe and you look at the pictures, yes, part of it is below the horizon. Like, this guy, whatever his name is, Johan, he always posts that picture. Well, look, your Chicago skyline is partially below the water. Okay, but that's not like they think that's like the nail in the coffin evidence that, oh look, Earth is a globe. No, but see, the thing is, like you said, it's below the horizon on the flat Earth, and it's below the horizon on the globe Earth. And there's a difference in how much that it's below the horizon. There's some formula that I don't know what it is, but somebody's gonna figure it out at some point, and it's basically it's a formula for how far you can see based on the distance you are above the ground, and that kind of stuff. Our sight is not infinite. That's why I always tell people that as far as the horizon, you can only see things a finite distance away. The globers, they think that you can see an infinite distance.
They're
And the only reason,
retarded.
I mean, some of them are, but I think, yeah.
Yo,
So,
I mean, Gab has some of the most retarded globs I've ever
they
seen
do.
in my whole
So,
life. You got
so here,
that Johan dude. You got, I
right.
mean, they're just like just a group of dummies.
So yes. So let me make a differentiation because I think this is really important. If we're actually going to reach people, it's really important that we differentiate between the people who are actually trying to push the globe,
Oh
because I
yeah,
think the retarded people are the ones, you know, they're trying to. I don't think they're trying to understand. I think they're purposely trying to detract and
of course,
deflect, and see, here's the thing. There's other people probably even listening to this that still do believe in the globe, but they're not retarded,
of
but
course.
they haven't seen enough evidence to be like, oh man, that's it.
Yeah,
And that's all it is.
and you know when I call when I say retarded, obviously I'm talking obviously you got for example, I mean I obviously used to believe the Earth was a sphere because that's what most of us believe.
Right.
And but it's one thing to believe the sphere because it's what you were taught and you've never even considered or questioned it. It's another thing to be a diehard cultist committed to defending this model
Right.
and giving not even giving an inch to a single like I was talking to my brother yesterday and he's not really convinced the earth is flat, but he is rational and reasonable enough to be like, well, I may not think the earth is flat, but I see why people believe it's flat. And
Yeah.
to me, that is honesty. That is intellectual honesty.
Yeah.
But with the globs, you're not getting intellectual honesty. These are people who are just they got blinders on and they're going head first into the globe and they don't want to see anything else.
Yeah, I mean that's how you really differentiate the people who are reasonable. Because as crazy, when I remember the conversation with the guy, and theoretically you could find it somewhere on Gab. I told the guy, I've been in space, and I told the guy, I've seen the curve and all this kind of stuff. See, because I was on the they call it the weightless wonder. I flew on the the airplane that they use to kind of fake space, because what they do is it's a parabolic flight. That's when I worked at NASA. I flew on a parabolic flight, and so I used to tell people, I've been in space, but I haven't been in space. I was just floating weightless for the 30 seconds as the plane went up and down.
Right. So you've actually been in that situation.
Yeah, that's how they do some of the footage. They do some of the footage. I've been to the neutral buoyancy lab. That's where they do some of the other. They do a lot of the footage underwater. I've seen it. I've been there. I wasn't there when they were recording, but see, what they tell you is that's how they get them to practice. This is where the astronauts practice. Okay, but that's where they do the real thing too. Prove me wrong. Why is there air bubbles rising up in the space footage?
Yeah.
You can see them. And when I basically that's when it hit me, is when they started. Because like I said, I watched 4 hours worth of videos, and it started really hitting me when they kind of exposed like the fraud of what NASA was doing and how they made it look like certain things. But it because I knew, because I've been there, because I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's how they do it. And once they broke my trust in NASA, that's when I was like, man, these guys are probably right. And then the rest of it's just, kind of figuring out, and okay, well, how does this work and how does this work? I don't rule out anything anymore. That's I feel like how I kind of came to the flat earth is, and that's what people need to do if they're really interested in the truth. They need to basically kind of throw all their preconceived notions out the window and just kind of study what somebody is saying. And you should be able to tell if they're a shill, relatively quickly, if they're being disingenuous or whatever. But when I came to this, I thought the guy was nuts, but I took him seriously. I watched his stuff. I went back and forth with him for a little while, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's right.
So here's something that I've been thinking about lately, and it's this concept. Um, Flat Earth, fantasy becomes reality. And the reason I've been thinking that is because for me, it's almost like the heliocentric model kills all the wonder of our existence. When everything is just a speck of dust, if the universe reduces down to nothing but matter, if consciousness is just a derivative illusion of the physical brain, um, it's kind of a weird world, but alternatively you have the flat earth. So okay, so we have a flat plane. Okay, well, for all intents and purposes, the globe is functionally flat, and even the globers admit that it looks flat, feels flat. You don't have to worry about, oh shit, I'm going around the curve as you go on a long road trip for 10 hours. You can you can act as if the world is flat and the world will function just fine on that local level. Okay, but then okay, so what happens at the end of the flat earth? So this is where things start getting interesting. Okay, you have these two major sort of forks. You have, oh, the infinite plane, or you have the edge, the dome, the edge, the boundary, the limit of our reality. For me, both of those, they shatter and they shake us. They shake me out of the physicalist matrix. The heliocentric physicalist model for me kills the soul. It kills my sense of wonder for the world that we live in. Which is funny because Carl Sagan and the atheists love to point to space and talk about how magical it is and the endless, galaxies and all the wonder to discover. And I like to call that the difference between inner space and outer space. And I don't think that outer space is the final frontier. I think inner space is the final frontier. They got it all backwards, these little freaks. But there's something to me about the idea of like, let's just go with the dome. Let's just say there's a dome. I'm not saying there is one. I'm just saying, what if? What if there's a limit to our reality? What if you go far enough on our flat plane and you reach a barrier? Invisible wall, a dome, who knows? But you get to a point where you suddenly have to stop, look up at this barrier, and you have to say to yourself, I can't get out of here. And as far as I'm here as this living physical being, I'm not going to be able to know what's on the other side. There's something almost fantastical about the flat Earth. It's wild. It's mind blowing. And you might say, well, fantasy is fake. So you're saying flat Earth is fake? No, I'm saying reality is fantasy. The real world is it? This is incredible that but on the contrary, the heliocentric model, the materialist, the physicalist model, the atheist model, it's just matter and it's just bouncing around for no reason. It goes on, infinite space and all these little spheres and planets. Like that to me doesn't give me any sense of wonder. That to me actually makes me feel dead inside.
Yeah, I remember when I first realized that the flat Earth was true. I looked up and I was like, it just was. I was just invigorated. Like I have never felt so alive before. When I realized that that was the case, I was like, holy smokes! Like God is right up there, and it just was mind boggling to me
Yeah.
because I was kind of having a hard time, and I feel like that's kind of again the purpose of it is to I was having a hard time rectifying like my Christianity with basically my science background. I was like, well, okay, but if we're on a spinning ball, how does that make any sense? Like if then that means God isn't really up there, basically. And I think that's what people that go away from that, I think that's what they're doing is they're basically replacing that religion with the religion that the, you know, powers that be want us to believe instead.
Right. That's amazing that you had that experience. Had some similar moments, but I feel like I kind of put a damper on it because I feel like if I just, when I was first really starting to consider the possibility that we don't live on a spinning space ball in the solar system they tell us we live on, I remember feeling anxious one night. Like I was like, oh my God, we don't live on planet Earth. we don't live in this corner of the universe that they've told us. Um, and I would get like existential anxiety feelings because I was like freaking out, like, my God, well, what's out there? What's at the edge?
Yeah.
Well, where the fuck are we? Like, it was a bit, it was tough, and
Right.
I can see why a lot of people don't they run from this topic because you it's almost like being lost, but like really being lost. Like
Yeah.
it's like it's one thing to be lost, like, in a weird town or in the woods, but dude, we're lost. We don't know where we are. We're not in this corner of the fucking universe. We don't.
Right.
We're not being orbited by these planets. They tell
Right.
us, man. So yeah,
It
it
is
was
really something, and it really does get to kind of the core of who we are, and that's, I think, why, like you said, it drives some people away, because they're like, man, well, if this is true, then basically not only is everything most of the stuff that I've believed all my life is not true, then like kind of what you said, where the frick are we?
exactly.
And my thing is, there has to be a dome. I know that some people are like, well, I don't know if there's a dome or not, but to me the sun is proof that there is a dome, because that light has to come through. It needs to be focused, right? There needs to be a lens for that to be there. That little ball
No,
of light that is the sun, you know, um, there has to be something focusing it there. So to me, there has to be a dome.
very interesting. Okay, but then here's a question. I've been thinking recently that the sky is flat. What are your thoughts?
I think it can be. So here's the thing. So if you study this primer field, I'll post a picture of that too.
Okay, I'll pull it up here. Real quick, I want to say shout out to everybody who's tuning in. Thank you guys. The chat is extremely lively and active today. If you're brand new, you just tuning in, be sure to subscribe to my BitTubers channel here. This is going to be basically my main place where I'm posting content going forward. So be sure to subscribe, sign up, and once you sign up, you can also chime into the chat as well. So be sure to sign up here on BitTubers while you can. Thank you guys so much. Sorry, go ahead, man.
No, that's okay. You're good. And the other thing too is I wanted to make sure that we answered that other guy's question, because I don't want to be the guy that comes on here and then tries to like, somebody asks a question, I completely avoid it. So I do not want to be that guy. So maybe if he feels satisfied, he can voice his whether he is or not.
Well, do you remember what the question was?
It was something about the sun and the moon. Basically, he was asking like, how far do I think it is away?
Yeah, he
And
was talking about sun, moon, and the distances and the sizes
yeah,
of them.
I mean, I don't really know exactly how far it is away, but I can tell you by looking at that picture that it is certainly not 93 million miles. Maybe yeah. I mean, I don't know what the scale is on that picture either, but clearly the sun is right there. And as far as the
Right.
moon, it seems like the moon. So here's the thing. So the question that you just asked, as far as the atmosphere being flat and everything, that kind of gets into what I was going to say with the moon anyway. So if you look at this picture, this primer field here, and that's another series that you can watch. It's called the Primer Fields or something like that, by David LaPont. And if you look at that, he still believes in space and everything, but that is he put plasma in some magnets, and basically these bowl magnets, that's what the red and the blue are, and he ran a current through it, and it made these magnetic fields. And
Hmm.
so it's to me, it makes perfect sense that the earth is flat because of this. So if you look at it, and like the field lines and everything, you know the if you see where those arrows are pointing, like where the pink arrows are, or the little pink circles, and then the blue arrows are pointing to like that area there. To
Yeah.
me, that is what's responsible for what most people call gravity, right? It's a magnetic field that's pushing everything down in that area. And if you look at those field lines, that's and this probably speaks to why they don't want us at the North Pole too, because look at the field line go straight out, like up.
All right.
You know, and what you were talking about as far as the sky being flat, you know, I think that could be because here's what I think. I think that the ground, you know, you got a layer, you have layers within this little bubble. You have layers. You have the ground, then you have the air, and then I believe there's water up there too. And that's held in place by a magnetic field. If you look at these magnetic field lines, so like you're saying, you know, it's very possible that the sky could also be like a flat disk. I mean, it obviously has some thickness to it, though.
Right.
But yeah,
Well, thank you guys so much for watching this short snippet of what is a much longer full interview. It's about 2 hours or so with my guest, this fine gentleman who says he's a former NASA satellite engineer. If you guys want to watch the full interview, be sure to check out the link in the description of this video. It's posted over on my brand new BitTubers channel since I've been basically banned from my own YouTube channel at this point due to YouTube censorship. I've moved off platform. But again, if you guys are interested in watching the full interview, it's available right now, one click away. Just click the link in the description of this video and you'll be able to watch the full interview on my new channel. Thank you guys so much.